going to pick up from Daf Tzadik Daled, page 94. And we're in the middle of paragraph, towards the end of paragraph 116. And we're going to review here something that we did last time we learned the Daas Tevunos. But we're going to read the paragraph. This is a summary paragraph. Here the Ramchal is going to summarize what he spoke about for the last couple of shiurim, excuse me. So we'll pick up with the summary, and then we'll move forward. Through the summary, we'll get back into the Daas Tevunos. Rav Friedlander's caption here is Hester HaYichud, when God's Yichud, when God's uniqueness, we talked about the Gili HaYichud earlier in the Sefer, when God's uniqueness, his sovereignty is hidden, Gorem L'Kulkulim HaMafilim Al Hashpos Hashlemus, that Hester Ponim, or the Hester HaYichud, is what brings about the possibility of ruination and not a complete, perfect hashpa'ah, an imperfect world. Yisgala hayichud, in the future, when God revealed his yichud, his perfect sovereignty is revealed, tishlo tashpa'as hashlemus. At that time, the perfect hashpa'ah will come to the world, and the world will be the perfect world. V'hoya Hashem l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Hashem echad u'shmo echad b'mher v'yamein. So the Ramchal now says, Klol shel davar, the summary of what we just, the general proposition, the summary of that which we just learned. Chidesh ha'adam baruch hu hashba'a mimenu el hanimtsoyim. The Rebbeinu Shalom sent down a hashba'ah, an influence, whatever, we've always talked about what exactly is a hashba'ah. It's hashba'ah. The Rebbeinu Shalom sent down an influence to all of creation. Shetochios inyana, deep inside this hashba'ah, the very kernel, the very seed of this hashba'ah, eina ela hemshech hakdusha mimenu yisborach al nemtsoyim. At its very source, this hashba'ah is pure holiness, it's pure ruchnius, because it's coming from the Rebbeinu Shalom. However, this hashba'ah, as it goes down and comes into our world, it goes through different different conversions, different changes, until we see it as an apple. That apple started as a completely dover ruchni, a hashba'ah that came from the Rebbeinu Shalom. And as that hashba'ah moves down the chain, it eventually becomes what we call the teva of a seed in the ground, becoming a tree with water and air and chlorophyll, and then the tree gives off branches, the branches gives off leaves, the leaves give off blossoms, the blossoms give off an apple. That's a process that started with a hashba'ah from the Rebbeinu Shalom, which was kulei ruchni, kulei kadosh, and comes down through all kinds of Kabbalistic transformations until it becomes a physical object. Va'ol chidish drachim lahashba'ah, shfolim ufachusam lagabi malas chidushasa. The Rebbeinu Shalom also was machadesh. All these things are new. Before the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world, these things did not exist. The Rebbeinu Shalom created this idea of hashba'ah and sends the hashba'ah, the influence. The Rebbeinu Shalom also was machadesh, a new thing, where there's a hashba'ah, the hashba'ah can become less than pure kedusha. In other words, if the Rebbeinu Shalom sent us down directly the hashba'ah of kedusha, we wouldn't know how to eat it. We couldn't eat it. We have physical bodies. That was one of the miracles in the Midbar, where the Jewish people were able to eat man, lechem min hashamayim. This is the bread of heaven. And it was a different kind of food. You were able to taste whatever you wanted, except for certain select items. People ate and they didn't have to go to the bathroom. This was not a physical food. You have to be on a very high spiritual level to be able to ingest and live on mun. The mun is a spiritual food, but yet it has to give sustenance to a physical body. The Ramban, Nachmanides, and Pashas B'Shalach talks about this. And he talks about the idea that because the Jewish people crossed the Yam Suf, and on the Yam Suf, they were elevated to such a high level, they were able to say, Zeh Keli Vanveyu, this is my God. Roa Shifra Layom Mashalivo Yecheskel Ben Buzi, even a maid that was taken out of Mitzrayim saw unbelievable visions of prophecy at Kriyas Yamsuf. The prophecy was unbelievable. The clarity by which they understood God was unbelievable. Once their neshamas were lifted up to that high level, the Ramban says there was now an ability for the neshama that resided in such a physical body, for that physical body to be able to live Amman. Otherwise, you can't live Amman. So the Rebbeinu Shalom sends this hashbah, but then the hashbah has to sort of be reduced. It has to go from its perfect level of kedusha into transformed into something less than pure kedusha, so we can use it in our physical bodies. V'chidish b'hashbah atzma, and also a new thing was created inside this hashbah. Ha-bitulim, things can cease, things don't go on forever. That's also built into the hashbah. We learned about this when we learned about where does Ra and evil and death, where do all these things come into the world. So we learned about basically the two stages of creation, the Yuli stage, using Nachmanides' language, and then post the Yuli stage. So in this hashbah, in this influence that God is sending out to creation, he put in there the bitulim, the possibility that these things can cease to exist. They're not going to be here forever. V'kilkul asdorim, and ruination, things become ruined. Shezacharti, as I've explained. Shemitzad hester haponim, mischadshim kol advorim ha'ele b'chok hashba'aso. Umitzad hagilui acharei kein mispashtim kol halavushim ha'ela mimeno v'onedaber mizeh lefanim b'siyata d'shmaya. Let's imagine this as, again, not because we're learning Kabbalah, but just let's use that language that everybody seems to throw around, the idea of the klipa, the shell. Inside, we have a body, a physical body, which is really a shell. And inside the shell, there's a neshama. The neshama uses the shell and wants the shell to do Torah mitzvahs, the hands, the fingers, the eyes, the ears, etc. But the fact of the matter is the guf is still a shell and impedes the activities of the neshama. The neshama is trying to control this guf, and the neshama wants to shine through the guf. We talked about Moshe Rabbeinu, Koran Arapana, but it's a dark, dense, thick flesh and blood. A person can get to the madrega where his neshama can shine through that dense and dark guf. But it's dense and dark, it's physical, it's offer min adom, it's dust of the earth. So the shell is the body, and the neshama is inside the body. There's a whole world out there that God is running, and we don't see him running it so well because of a klipa. There's a shell. And we talked about this when we did the Bereisha Shir, I believe 2 weeks ago, Rafutner's Pachad Yitzchak, about the idea of God initially wanted to create the world al pidin and then added rachamim to the world. Why did God want to initially create the world al pidin? Did he change his mind? Chas Shlomi didn't change his mind. We talked about that in the Pachad Yitzchak. But the point that the Rebbeinu Shalom, the point of the Rebbeinu Shalom's first wanting din and then rachamim is If the world was pure din, there would be no Bechira. If there's no Bechira, we're all robots. If there's all robots, we don't have the ability to get schar. We get pure, unearned lollipops. To get earned lollipops, which is the Chok HaToiv L'Heitiv, the Ramchal tells us at the beginning of Daas Tevunos, we need to earn it. To earn it means we make decisions. Making decisions means we need to have Bechira. Making Bechira means the world cannot be pure din, because it was pure din. If someone did Naveh, would be struck down that second. And if enough people witnessed, this guy did Naveh, he died that second. This person did Naveh, he died that second. Eventually people say, I'm not doing any Averas because you died the second you do the Avera. So pure din, punishment, the moment you do something wrong, would not allow for Bechira to continue to exist in the world. And we need Bechira in order for the ultimate goal of the world, where the Rebbeinu Shalom wants to give earned reward to be able to come about. So there is a klipa on the whole world. There's a shell on the whole world. Some people refer to the shell, we talked about this on Hanukkah, some people refer to the shell as Teva, the rules of nature. The rules of nature seem to run the world. You put a seed in the ground, a plant comes out. And they look at the world as the world of science, cause and effect. And through the cause and effect, people come up with evolution, and people come up with all kinds of things where you don't need to believe in God in order to believe that the world, in order to understand how the world was created. You don't need God. We have theories, how the world came into creation. How does the world continue to exist? We have theories. How do the orbits continue? We have all kinds of theories. We don't need a God to explain anything. That's the shita of the pure Teva people, the pure Yavan people. We don't need a God to explain anything, chas v'shalom. And the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world this way, with a klipa, with a shell. Now, we can decide to crack open the shell and let the light out of the shell, which is sort of what we do Hanukkah, crack the shell, let the whole world see the true light. Or we can leave the shell and just believe that there's nothing in the shell and it's just a shell. That's what it is. That's why we have a shell. So there are two ways to look at the world. The world is made up of Teva. It just runs. There's no God. Or crack the shell, take a peek inside, and you'll see the light of God. And this is necessary in order for people to have Bechira. So the Ramchal says that these are the two ways things happen in the world. The way the hashpah occurs in the world. Shemitzad hester upon him, from the angle that God is hidden, we can't see him because there's a shell over the light of God that runs the world. All kinds of things happen in the world through this influence. You can't see God. And where does this come from? Where does my parnasa come from? Where does my health come from? Where do my children come from? Where do all these things come from? So you don't see God so clearly. And therefore, the more the world just sees the superficial shell and refuses to see God inside the shell and his light, the more the hashpah becomes constricted, and the more the world becomes, the more the world devolves into chaos. That's a hester panim. Umitzad hagilui, the more we reveal God, or God reveals himself, and the shell breaks open and we see the light, mispashtim kol halavushim, the Ramchal, as he did last week, uses the word levushim, the garments. The guf is a garment to the neshama. The rules of Teva are a garment over the Ribono Shel Olam's yichud. So where we reveal God, or God reveals himself, these garments are removed, or this shell is removed, and now we see the true source of the hashpah. And when we understand the true source of hashpah, we begin to unravel the chaos of the world. We begin to put the world into a better order and a better state of affairs until the full light is exposed, and we have the perfect world with Im Hashem, Mashiach Tzidkeinu, B'me'er V'yamein, and the events post-Mashiach. Ma shetzorech lanu b'mokum hazeh, what we need right now to take from our discussion to move forward, hulada shebahashpa atzma chidushay devorim chidsha hagzeu el yoina. We need to move forward and understand that this hashpa, this influence that God created, and through this influence came about a world, and came about the way he runs the world, and came about evil, and came about good. There are all kinds of new things that didn't exist before the world. Chidushay dvorim chidshag zev yoina. Vehem ha'ikar b'mashenim tza'achkach ba'olam. And this is the ikar, this is the principle, this is the foundation of everything that is found later in the world, whether it's good things in the world, bad things in the world. All these things come from that hashpah that God created in the two stages that we talked about. It was only after God made all these quote-unquote hachanot, after God prepared all these initial things, he then went on into a phase of creation. There are things that God brought into being, the hashpa'ah, the limitation of the hashpa'ah. All these things were the preparation for actually bringing the world to a state of reality. Boni alpi kol hanyanim ha'ela, built upon all these things that we've discussed, or murkav mikol advarim, and it is also mixed in. All these things that we discussed became mixed in. If you want to think about the Yuli of the Ramban Nachmanides, in that first particle, eventually the particle becomes from the tohu Yuli to the vohu. It has air in it, fire, earth, water. All these things are now in it and mixed into it as we learn. And then the Rabboni Shlolem in different proportions takes from these four things and makes light, or makes a lion, or makes a tulip. Lezgalgal no'inyan le'inyan. And also, besides creating things through this hashpah, the Rabboni Shlolem runs the world through this hashpah. So there's the act of creation, and then there's the act of managing and supervising that which has already been created. We learned this yesterday in the Bereishis Shir in the Ramban. The Ramban explained to us that when the Rabboni Shalom says, Vayomer in the 6 days of creation, Vayomer Lakimi Hi'ar, that represents the Rabboni Shalom's will that something come into existence. But the fact that God willed something into existence doesn't mean it's going to always stay that way. And we know that there are things that didn't stay that way, that went through changes. When the Rabboni Shalom says, Vayar Elokim Ki Tov, the Ramban explained to us, Vayar doesn't mean God saw that it's good. It doesn't mean God recognized that it's good, which is where Nachmanides parted ways with Rashi and the Ibn Ezra. Vayar Elokim Ki Tov means, and God decided that it shall exist. The Ramban told us that not only do you need the hashpah from God to bring something into existence, but you need the constant hashpah of God to keep it in existence. There is no default setting by which once in existence, always in existence. Machadish b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh bereishis. God renews the world every second through this hashpah. If the hashpah ceases, it implodes. The Ramchal gave us examples that we talked about several weeks ago. Every second of the day, to every human being, God sending kidney hashpah. Kidney work, kidney work, kidney work, liver work, liver work, lung work, lung work, brain work, brain work. It's a positive hashpah. And God forbid, the Ribono Shalom decides that a person is not zoicha to kidney hashpah. So it's not that the Ribono Shalom send kidney disease to someone. The Ribono Shalom doesn't have to send anything bad to anyone. The idea that God sends bad things is only because people have a misunderstanding about how the world works. Because God created me, because God created kidneys, the kidneys have to work. And in order for the kidneys not to work, God has to attack my kidneys. God doesn't have to attack anything. You're not under the fault setting. God created a person, he created him with kidneys, and every second God's telling the kidneys to work. And 1 second, Le'aleinu, the Rebbeinu Shalom says this person's not Zoicha. The kidneys, the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't say kidneys work. He doesn't say kidneys stop working. That's the default setting that doesn't exist. The Rebbeinu Shalom he doesn't say kidneys continue. So the same way the Ramban told us yesterday, God wills things into existence, he also has to will them to maintain and continue every second in existence. So the same way that the Ribono Shel Olam wills things into existence by using the hashpah, he also supervises, guides, and manages the world through this hashpah. And the hashpah could become good, later the hashpah can become bad, but it's running through this hashpah. Kasher goza Allah hachefetz elyon, as God decrees. Kuf Yud Zayin, paragraph 117. Amr HaNeshama, the Neshama said, Be'emes hakdama zos ikarit hi. In truth, I understand that this introduction is very fundamental. Daas kol achonos harabas hanimtsoyim letzorech metzias ha'olam hazeh. For me to understand all the preparations that God did, all the things that God prepared in order for him to bring the world into being. The Rebbeinu Shalom created the hashpah, and what did he do with the hashpah? And what did he put into the hashpah? All these things are now in place, and now God is going to use these things to create a world. She'ein tchunasai nishlemes ela acha kol achonos ha'ele, nashlam ata inyaneinu. Now the Neshama is saying to the Seichel, now we should be ready to finish the discussion of this subject. So Rav Friedlander on page 95, he has his caption for what we're going to be discussing in the next year. Metchila nivra ha'olam bilti sholem. Initially, the world was created perfectly imperfect. We're now heading into an in-depth discussion of ideas that we discussed earlier in the Sefer as introductory concepts, and now we're going to delve into them more deeply. Sometimes people learn the Daas Tevunos, they say it sounds like he's repeating himself. He's not repeating himself. If you learn the Sefer slowly, it sounds like he's repeating himself. If you learn the Sefer day after day and day after day, you understand that what he did in the beginning of the Sefer is he introduced concepts. So we talked a lot about God created a perfectly imperfect world so that we can complete it and we can be partners with him in creation. And we talked, those were introductory statements and principles. And now, as the Sefer continues, he's delving and developing these ideas. So Rav Friedlander's caption is, Metchila nivra olam bilti sholem. Initially, the world was created imperfect. She'echolu bo kilkele hara. And because it's imperfect, in that area of imperfection, there was now the potential for ruination, for evil to occur. Achakach hugbol hara shloyechra ha'olam. Now, let's make believe for a second the world was created in its initial stage, 95% tov, with a vacuum area, and in this vacuum area there was the potential for evil and for ruination. And then Adam eats on the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, and he actually now gives, he's actually gone into that 5%, and he's brought to life, he's brought to reality that potential 5%. And now, as the Ramchal talks about in Derech Hashem, generations move on. And as the generations move on, they begin to expand the 5%. The Rebbeinu Shalom waited a certain amount of generations until Avraham Avinu. He waited from the generation of Adam till Noach, that didn't work. He waited from Noach to Avraham, and that didn't work. He waited 20 generations for people to be masakin the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra and to get back to where they were supposed to be. It didn't work. Not only didn't it work, they expanded the 5% potential imperfections to, let's say, 50%. So now, as the world was created 95% perfect with 5% potential imperfection, Adam Rishon stepped into that potential and made it real. So now we're at 95% good, 5% evil and ruination. And as 20 generations till Avram Avinu go by, they begin expanding. They're doing more rishus, the Dor Hamabel, the Dor Haflaga. And now the 5% of potential ruination is not just 5% of actual ruination, it's expanded. I now have a world that's 50% good, 50% in a state of ruination. How far can that go? Can the evil and the ruination continue expanding? 60, 70, 80, 90, 95, 100? Can evil and ruination actually take over the entire world and destroy the entire world that God created? And the answer is no. God put a Hagbalah. He put a limitation. This is as far as evil can go, and that's built into the potential of evil. So let's read Rav Friedlander's caption again to what we're going to learn about at the next shir on Daas Tevunos. Metchila nivra olam bilti sholem. Originally, the world was created, as we say, perfectly imperfect. Sheyacholu bo kilkele hara. And in that state of imperfection, there's a certain area where ruination and evil can take form. Achakach, after that, hugbul hara, the Ribono Shalom put a limitation on how far this evil and ruination can go in this world. Shelo yechraf ha'olam, that the world can't be destroyed. So even when mankind went through the Dor Hamabel, the Ribono Shalom did not destroy the whole world and start from scratch. There was a limitation. It went pretty close, but there was a limitation put on the evil, and Noach and his wife and his 3 sons and their wives are able to board the Teva with the animals. Where these animals come from? This world. And Noach and his family came from this world. The rest of the world around it got destroyed because of their evil and ruination. And the post-Mabel world comes into being through people who were in the pre-Mabel world and animals that were in the pre-Mabel world. The ruination, the evil cannot completely destroy the world that the Ribono Shalom created. There's a borderline that the Ribono Shalom put on how far the Ra can go. He will not allow the Ra to actually destroy his world. We talked a little about this when we talked in Parshas Noach about the Parsha in terms of what was going on inside the Teva. We talked about the Maral. Maral actually explained that Adam Rishon took the prior parts of the prior world into the Teva, and in the Teva, a new world was being created. And after Noach came out of the Teva, there was a new world for Noach to come into based upon the world created inside the Teva. But of course, the world created inside the Teva was created through Adam, his wife, his children, animals that had come onto the Teva that had been there pre-Mabel. All Yid need Yeshua Shav Yeshua. All Yid need before Shav Refuas. All Yid need Bracha Shav Brachas. All Yid need Nachamas Yeshua's Brachas Refuas. Rabbi Shalom should send them the Brachas Yeshua's Refuas Nachamas. Brachas Yeshua's Refuas Nachamas can only come from the Rabbi Shalom. He's the Echad Yachad Miyuchad. They come when he wants it to come, how he wants it to come. If he wants to come through a shliach, that's only through the shliach he picks. And we understand this and we live this. Then we're doing a Gilui HaYichud for ourselves, which we donate to Klal Yisrael, so that we get to this, to the critical mass of Gilui HaYichud. The Rebbe Shalom says, Kindalach, you did so much already. I'm sending Mashiach to finish the Gilui HaYichud. B'Ratzayin Hashem Mamish today, we should see the Binyan Beis HaMikdash. We should be able to bring the Karbanis. We should be able to bring the Machzis HaShekel. Refuah Shalema to Yosef Chaim ben Shoshana Menucha, Moshe Zelig ben Rezel, Liba Malka ben Chaya Braina, David ben Margalit, Kol Chole HaKorona, B'Sof Shar Chole Yisrael, Force Never, Force Haguf, Hashpagalos Mankriv Neimamein. This woman who Nebuch got killed in this terrorist attack, Nebuch, Hesalavaya is going on right now. I don't know her name. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Nechama to her husband, her kindlach, send the Nechama to Klal Yisrael. Bela Amos Lanetzach, Mocha Hashem Lakim Dim Al Kolpanim. The Rebbeinu Shalom should already be Makayim the pasuk in Hazinu. V'ni Kesi, Damam Loini Kesi. I will not forgive the Gentile nations for all the Jewish blood they spilled. The Rebbeinu Shalom should take Nakama for us against these nations and against these people and free us from this oppression already. We should be Zeicha to the pure Hashbos, HaToiv, individually and as a Klal Yisrael. Please, everybody, take care of yourselves. Do the things you need to do. Refrain from doing things you don't need to do. Go places. Use your seichel. When, how, when is it safe? When can I go? When should I go? Thinking these things through or keeping yourself healthy. Keeping yourself healthy is a mitzvah. Last bear hagoyle and choshen mishpat. It's navodas Hashem to keep yourself healthy and well, so we can greet Mashiach Tzidkenu, B'Rtzayin Hashem Hayoim. Everybody have a wonderful day. Sei gesund. The woman's name is Esther Horagen. I don't know her official Esther, but she should have an Aliyas Neshama, and the family should have a Nechama.